Well, welcome to Through the Eyes of Survivors. You know, emotional abuse doesn't leave bruises, but it can leave scars that are deeper than one sees. It's manipulation, it's the gaslighting, the fear of being wrong for simply existing. It's waking up one day and realizing the person you became was built on someone else's control. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and tonight we're talking about the abuse that hides in plain sight, the kind that erodes like self confidence, faith, self identity. My guest knows the story personally. June Berlinger is a survivor, a nurse, an author, and an advocate whose life's work has changed how professionals see domestic violence. But before she was a leader, she was living it. Her story, it will remind us that healing isn't about finding who you were. It's about discovering who you were always meant to be. Thank you for joining Through the Eyes of Survivors.
Important notice: the following content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. All discussions are based on personal opinions and experiences. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out to a local support organization. Important notice: the following content may be triggering.
Welcome back, everyone. Before we get started with talking with June, I have to plug our great affiliates real quick. Truth Finder. Let's take a quick moment to talk about something that can really empower you on your journey towards safety and healing. It's called Truth Finder. It's a simple tool that helps you uncover public records and background information about people you may encounter in your life, whether you're reconnecting with someone from your past or you just want to be sure about the people that you are around, that they're trustworthy. Truth Finder provides you with the information you need to make informed decisions. And here at Through the Eyes of Survivors, we're all about creating that safe space and giving survivors the tools they need to reclaim their power. So that's why we're excited to have them as an affiliate. It's a tool that helps you take control of your own security and peace of mind. Try it out now and support our podcast. Use the link in the description and in the comments. And thank you for supporting the mission there. Opus Clips. We're always thrilled to partner with Opus Clips. It's an AI-driven platform that turns powerful podcast moments like you will see today into short, impactful clips. And It helps to tell survivor stories and hard truths. It amplifies our voices for helping to spread awareness across all the platforms. So, if you want to turn your content into scroll stopping reels and shorts, try out Opus Clips. Our affiliate link is in the description below. And our last partner here is Self Defense Keychain Store. They are a woman and minority owned based business that is committed to empowering individuals with practical, discreet, and stylish self defense tools. And by shopping through our affiliate link, you're not only investing in your personal safety, but you're also supporting our mission. So help raise awareness about domestic violence, make your purchases, and use the code Break the Silence for your extra 10% off. So we thank y'all for joining us. My guest tonight is someone whose courage and compassion have touched thousands. June Berlinger, BSN, is a survivor, mother, nurse, writer, and public speaker who spent her career helping women find safety and hope. She served on Florida's governor's domestic violence and sexual assault task force from 1994 to 1997 and was directed the Women's Center at Tallahassee Memorial Health Care for 14 years. June developed Florida's first hospital protocol for domestic violence and authored the book First Step, a victim handbook. It's a handbook distributed statewide. So, a 4-time published author, June has trained professionals in healthcare, law enforcement, and the legal system across the U.S., and now lives in Denver, Colorado. And her husband, Tom, they continue the mission through writing advocacy at risingabovetrauma.net. So you can check her out there. June, thank you so much for joining us tonight at Through the Eyes of Survivors.
My pleasure for being here.
Wonderful. So, June, I always love to open with just our viewers getting a background story of from our survivors of what happened with them and how it influenced them into the work they have today. So can you kind of describe what abuse looked like in your life?
Well, it started as a child. I witnessed my father beating my mother, and Dad also psychologically abused my older sister and I, instilling fear. He physically then abused my younger siblings. And so I escaped that part of it. But from age 5 to 11, I then experienced sexual assault or incest at the hands of my dad's father. And that had a tremendous impact on my life. A few years later, I was raped at 15 when I was in high school by an upperclassman. And then at age 22, I was with a busload of students from Mankato State, Minnesota, and we went to Fort Lauderdale on spring break. It was just like the movie Where the Boys Are.
Right.
That's where I met Bob, my future husband. And he and I were married for 13 years, had 2 boys, and the abuse that was initial was sexual, was the first type of abuse I experienced at his hands. And then the rest with emotional started slowly and insidious that I didn't see what was going on. It was confusing. The behaviors were confusing, even though I grew up with an abusive father.
Right.
So it was normal to me. It's what a normal relationship looked like. So I was able, after 3 years of planning, to divorce him. And our divorce was final in 1987. So it's been several years.
Right.
But it also has taken several years to heal.
Yes, of course, and that's always the hardest part, isn't it?
It sure is.
Yes, and so June, let's go back and talk just a little bit more about your childhood, because one of the things you were telling me, and I know that some of our listeners and those who are watching may ask, is about your facial paralysis, if that was part of your abuse or not.
Well, many people have asked that, but no, I had polio at age 3,
Mhm.
and I had the unusual side effect of facial paralysis. So
Mhm.
it is not a common sign that you see with anyone who suffered from polio. So
Right.
I've had it my entire life.
Okay, wonderful. We just wanted to be sure that we answered that question for y'all, because I knew it would come up, and
Sure.
so thank you, June. But um, back with the childhood generational thing, that is very interesting to me, because my family has a very similar kind of history. My mother's uh, great grandfather, there was incest with her that went back to my
Mhm.
grandmother and to his daughters. It was a whole generation of trauma that went on for a very long time and never resolved itself until his death, because nobody really talked about it. Nobody wanted to stir that pot, for sure. And but you can see where it led through our family and
Mhm.
the dynamic and the impact it had. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about how it
Sure.
impacted you into your relationships.
Sure. First of all, the research I've done since writing the book
Hmm.
has been intensive, and I've learned so much. One of the resources that I utilized indicated that generational abuse can go back 10 to 12 generations. That was astounding to me. And
Yes.
what I'm referring to is on the abuser side,
Mhm.
that is the genes and DNA that causes someone to have repetitive abusive behavior. But the initial abusive episode can go back many, many generations. So as I look at my grandfather, he had to have been abused because both of his sons, my dad and my uncle, were abusive. Now, my uncle was sexually abusive, where my dad was emotionally and physically abusive.
Right.
But that behavior is a learned behavior on the part of the abuser. Now, what's interesting is with victims, victims can either come from a healthy home, a normal, healthy, functioning home, or an abusive home. And the characteristic of a victim, I always wondered, how did I get into this
Yes.
relationship? Because I considered myself intelligent and kind of well rounded, I thought. And what I learned is that the characteristic of victims is that it's a person that's caring,
Hmm.
wanting to fix someone, rescue them, help them, especially if they had a poor childhood or
Yes.
background or upbringing. And if the victim grew up in an abusive home, they tend to stay longer in the abusive relationship compared to someone who came from a healthy home. But
Right.
both can become victims of domestic violence.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's some really interesting work you have done, for sure. And how does that slow erosion like impact people day to day, even in your story as a nurse and a mother?
The erosion starts with beating someone down before beating them up. And that definitely was the case with me. It started, the sexual abuse was immediate. But what's so interesting, I did not connect the dots until I was writing the book. So I suffered 6 years of incest from age 5 to 11, then rape, Then I get into a marriage and relationship in which sexual abuse was the first type of abuse. So I guess it's no surprise,
Right.
that it happened that way. But as far as the emotional abuse, it
Mhm.
started with kind of innocent to someone else looking in put downs.
Right.
He would joke about my cooking. Actually, everybody jokes about my cooking, but that aside, um, but also he made fun of my small town upbringing.
Oh, okay.
And in groups with other people, he would tell inappropriate jokes
Mhm.
that focused on women in a disparaging way. And he talked bad about his mother. And when I met her, she was one of the kindest people I've ever met. And so those were early warning signs. But
Yes.
the other thing that kind of got me hooked, if you want to call it that, was a term that's used commonly now is love bombing.
Yes.
And that is putting you on a pedestal. He's never met anybody like you. You're
Mhm.
the greatest thing that's ever happened to his life. You're beautiful, you're smart, you're talented, you're everything he's ever wanted. And then there's all the attention.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
the attention with gifts and flowers. And I felt like I was a princess. I felt like I was put on a pedestal. But slowly, that pedestal got knocked down, and I got knocked down with it. But after I got hooked into loving him, he
Mhm.
told me he loved me very early on.
Right.
And that is another red flag. The intensity of the relationship developing very early is brought on by the abuser. And so I found myself falling into that place. And it's the controlling that he did, the controlling of my time. He eventually wanted me to be with him all the time. So my time with my friends became very limited. I had to really struggle. I was still in my last year of nursing school, so I was still struggling to get my studies in so my grades wouldn't suffer. And I was eventually, as time went on, taken away from my family and friends and activities and things I enjoyed doing. So it
Mhm.
was a social isolation that happened, keeping me to himself.
Yes, absolutely. I know so many of us. That's very typical. That is the very
Mhm.
typical start of how all that emotional abuse and behaviors and tactics. I experienced a lot of the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, and
Did you experience the jealousy and possessiveness?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yes. That was bad. I think also what was really bad was the tearing down of anything that I felt I was really good at. You said cooking, that struck a chord with me because I feel like I'm a very good cook. My family thinks I'm an excellent cook, but it was one of the things that he very much so was actively tearing me down about consistently. He would take like whole dinners from the pan and throw them into the trash and say, start over,
So did Bob. Bob did the exact same thing if something triggered him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you start to doubt all those things that you really believed in yourself.
Now, the one thing I can tell you is that I took tremendous pride in being a good mother. That
Yes.
was my biggest purpose in life. And
Yes.
so what he would do is start attacking that. You're a
Hmm.
rotten mother. You don't care. And
Yes.
that was just like stabbing me with a knife. It was very, very difficult. And then the constant, no one else would want you, calling you names. And most of it happened initially in the privacy of our home, but
Right.
eventually it did go public.
Hmm. Yeah, because eventually it does spill out in some way, shape, or form. And yes, I experienced the same thing as well. To be called a terrible mother and yet your whole life is centered around those kids and him,
Yes.
and yet you couldn't do anything right. It didn't matter what it was.
Well, I had beliefs that I have since changed,
Mhm.
and they were based on my childhood and my life experiences. And it was that men tend to anger more quickly than women. I believed that it was the wife's responsibility solely to keep the family together, and the mother had to keep the children with the father no matter what.
Right.
I believed marriage was for life. The
Mhm.
vows I took, that divorce was a mortal sin. That goes into my religious background, but also that it was impossible. Divorce was not an option that I saw. I saw men as controlling, and that the women had to stick by him, and that I believed I was responsible for satisfying all his needs and making him happy. So I got stuck into what I believed were normal thoughts to keep the violence going.
Oh, yes. And that's so much like my mother's experience, because I think in generations it's changed a little by little. My generation, I I didn't the divorce wasn't something that was taboo anymore, but for me, because I was a child of divorce, I hung in way longer because I wanted
Mhm.
to prove that I wasn't gonna divorce
Right, right.
statistic out there, right? And so that's one of the things it definitely, I think in culture it has changed some and moved to the bar, but I don't think internally it's totally moved to the bar within us as women. From the survivors I meet every year, they still feel that way about they have to hold things together for the children. They have to keep things calm. They don't want to see divorce, and so they're hanging on way longer than they probably, well, they should. But um, there's something still there that is an underlying tone.
Well, another piece of this is I fell in love with him.
Yes.
The love does not go away when the abuse starts.
Right.
There's the underlying love and commitment to that.
Mhm.
And no one wants to admit that they really made a mistake. So I was defensive of him long after I should have been. And so his abuse affected my ability to think clearly and make good choices.
Yes.
One of the ways he did that was sleep deprivation.
Mm.
And I had never heard about this before I was in it and did research on it.
Right.
But what he would do is he would keep me up at night, and he would make me drink with him. And so I pretended I drank. I would pretended I was sipping alcohol, but didn't. And then I would go to bed, and then he'd wake me up in the middle of the night. And so my sleep was a mess. I was lucky to get 5 or 6 hours of solid sleep. Now, part of this was based on the fact that he was unemployed the last 7 years of our marriage. So he was able to sleep in and do what he wanted to during the day. And I was up early getting the kids to school and showing up at work and sometimes staying later. And so my days were jam packed full, keeping things going. So that sleep deprivation weakened my ability to make good decisions and healthy decisions for myself.
I can imagine. So that is something I didn't have to deal with, but my goodness, I wouldn't want to. That is for
No, no,
no.
no.
Yes, and I see some of our people in here have saying they've been there. So my goodness, I guess that's more common than I ever really thought of.
Hmm.
So
Well, when you think about abuse, the statistics are changing, but I'm not sure where the origin of the statistics are all coming from. I mean,
right,
I'm looking at the national stats, but 1 out of 3 of women are abused at some time in her life. and referring to victims here as female, even though we know victims and abusers are male and female.
Yes.
But 85% of the victims are female. And what happens is he attacks her ability to think of herself in a positive way, and that she believes no one else will want her,
Mhm.
you know, as the relationship develops. So, regarding stats, going back to that for a moment, a
Yeah.
recent stat that I read that women who experience emotional or psychological abuse, it's 1 out of 2.
Mhm.
Now, that's staggering.
Yes. Yeah.
And the one thing that you and I know is that domestic violence crosses all ages,
Mhm.
all socioeconomic levels, all professions, all ethnicities, countries, religions. It's everywhere.
Yes. Yes. And it's so pervasive. And so, that's just, it's incredible that I hadn't heard that stat before. 1 in 2.
1 in 2. And
Wow.
that was the emotional, focusing on the emotional,
Out the
which of
mo-
course is highly underreported
Mhm.
for sure. Because what gets reported typically is when law enforcement is involved. And so that happens when there's serious threats as
Right.
well as physical altercation.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
The one piece I want to throw in is that I don't think any victim is ready when the abuse turns from emotional to physical.
No.
I never thought he would touch me.
Right.
I mean, life was pretty miserable, but I didn't expect. And what happened to me, it was totally unprovoked. It was one evening, the boys were in bed sleeping. I was in the bedroom getting ready for bed. He walked in, lifted me up by my throat, and held me against the wall where my feet were off the floor until I passed out. And then I just fell in a hump on the floor. When I came to, he wasn't even there. And so I ran and dashed into the bathroom, shut the door, locked it, and I found myself huddled on the floor in fetal position by the tub, crying hysterically. It's like, what just happened? I
Yes.
couldn't believe it escalated to that level. But the harder part for me was the physical pain of the assault, the choking stopped. And it wasn't long before there was no physical indication or sensation of abuse. But with the emotional abuse, I felt that if anyone sliced open my abdomen, what would come spewing out would be organs on fire. I felt every minute, every day, whether I was working, sleeping, eating with the boys, that I was in intense internal pain, physical pain from that emotional abuse.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's got to be so scary. That's such a turning point. I know mine was scary and out of the blue as well. And you're never prepared for that. It,
No, no.
and I know it didn't even come until we were like a year and a half married. So you don't even, you never expected once you've been with someone that long, it's all of a sudden going to snap on a dime like that.
Yeah. What happened is after I started learning a lot about domestic violence, I became kind of the point person at Tallahassee Memorial when a staff member felt they identified a victim that was a patient. And so I would get called to come in and talk to the patient and basically kind of help and teach the staff on how to do it. And I remember this one woman that came in, and she had been scalped by her husband with his gun because the gun would not go off. So he beat her on the head until most of her hair was missing.
Mm.
And I was sitting with her. And after this horrific type of abuse, I asked her, I said, what is the worst episode of abuse that you can remember? Now, I wasn't minimizing what happened to her whatsoever,
Right.
but I wanted her perspective. And she said, Oh, it was this. And she went into an explanation of an emotional episode, even though this had just happened to her. So the intensity of the emotional abuse cannot be understated because when victims are often asked, including me, on emotional, I would respond in the same way.
Yes.
Would you like an example?
Sure.
Would that be helpful?
I think that would be great.
Okay, so I was a nurse at the hospital. I was teaching classes for a pediatrician, and it was Christmas time. And I would say the boys were probably at this point maybe 4 and 7 years old. And Bob drank every day from the day I met him. He drank every day. So when I was invited to social events, and this was a Christmas party where I was invited by the doctor to his house,
Mhm.
I would always have to assess how Bob was on any given day, how much he had had to drink, had he passed out, was he angry? So when I got home that day, he hadn't known that there was a party that night. I assessed that he seemed to be in a really good place. So I invited him to go with me. In those days, it was a real normal thing for me and my friends when we went to Christmas events that we home baked everything we brought.
Yes.
And so I am a baker. And so I had a tray full of homemade candies and cookies and bars. He drove to the home. And as we're getting out of the car, I opened the trunk to get out the tray. He pushed me aside and just grabbed it and lost his balance. He had been drinking, and all the food went on the ground. I was mortified because I was so proud of what I had put together to bring.
Mhm.
So I pieced together the food on the tray and we went inside. When we walked in the door, there were maybe 15 other people there. Most of them I knew, they worked in the healthcare industry. And he looked at Bob and said, "Help yourself, the bar is over there." But there was no beer, just hard liquor. And hard liquor was worse than beer in his case. So I went into the den and I was visiting with some friends. And Bob, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, stumbled in the room and inappropriately interrupted our conversations, was loud, and it was uncomfortable. He sat down next to me, and the doctor came into the den a short time later with his dog. He said, "I want to show you guys what I just taught my dog to do," which was kind of strange. But anyway, so he was showing some little tricks that the dog was doing. Bob got up, pushed the doctor aside, took the dog, and said, "I'm going to show you what you can do with dogs." And he started wrestling that dog on the floor.
Oh my.
People's drinks were spilling. He was kicking people. It was horrific. Now, none of those people knew him,
Mhm.
but they knew me.
Right.
And so I am sitting there, and in my mind, I'm thinking, they must all think I am crazy to be with someone that would be so hurtful and make such a scene. So I couldn't get out of there quick enough. I didn't even grab my coat. I snuck out the back door and ran to the car
Mm.
and just filled with tears.
I imagine
I
so.
sat in the car 15, 20, 30 minutes before Bob came out. And I thought he would be apologetic. Instead, he came and he was furious. "I can't believe you left me in that house with all those blankety blank people."
Mhm.
And so I said, "Give me the keys." And he would not let me drive. We did get home, but he took it out on me when we got home.
Yeah.
I was so humiliated. I did not want to go back to work ever.
Right.
I didn't want to see any of those people. But I was the sole breadwinner. I held the insurance policy. So the health insurance.
Right.
And so I didn't have a choice. I had to stay working. So I swallowed my pride. And when I saw the people, I apologized to them and just moved on. But it
Oh,
was really hard going back to work after
oh,
that.
I imagine. I imagine. Do you think he did that on purpose to humiliate you in that way, or was he just
No,
out of control?
that's the sad part.
Yeah.
I don't think so. It was just part of his behavior and what happens with the effect of alcohol. Now, alcohol, as you know, doesn't cause abuse,
No.
but there's a direct correlation.
Right.
So when most abusers do abuse alcohol, however, there are people that drink, maybe to excess, that never abuse. But what happens is it lowers the inhibition.
Hmm.
So when an abuser drinks, especially to extreme, the abuse is usually more severe or worse.
Yes.
So this example was to make a point of how devastating to the person that you are, your self esteem, your self confidence, your worth, and how it can be attacked with emotional abuse.
Yes. Absolutely. I think we'll go to a couple of comments before we take
Sure.
our mid-roll break here. Um, a lot of people are engaging with each other. It's good to see. I'm hoping that you guys find some fellow survivors there who relate. But I did see back here at the beginning, Jim Woodley, that's actually my husband. My sweet husband had a question. He says, one of the most difficult parts to get across to men and law enforcement about domestic violence and why women don't just leave after the first time. They don't seem to understand how hard it can be or all the different reasons women feel that she has to leave. How do you think you can change this misperception? Also, can you list some of the reasons?
Excellent questions. First of all, the reason I stayed as long as I did, number one was fear. The
Right.
fear is huge. He threatened if I left that he would kill not just me, he would kill my family, my
Mhm.
friends, my coworkers, and it got to a point that he threatened to kill the neighbors. He threatened to kill anyone who helped me. He threatened, which was almost just as severe for me, to take the boys and I would never see them again as long as he was alive. So fear is huge. And the victim has experienced his rage and his anger and knows what he's capable of. So that fear and that those threats are very real.
Oh, yes.
But the other reasons are for many women economics. Many women don't have marketable skills and can get a job where she can support herself and her children. And so she feels she needs to take it in order to have food on the table and a roof over her head and that of her children.
Right.
So economics is a reason. Another is promises. I promise I'll never do it again. I can't believe I did it. I can't believe it. I will never do it again. And initially, that happens. And
Mm.
this is part of the cycle of a violence that happens after an abusive episode are the promises and the hope that is instilled that it won't happen again. Let me refer to my notes just a second. Another is normal.
Mhm.
The abuse is normal life. And in my case, this was true.
Yes.
Another is the low self esteem and the inability, like with sleep deprivation, the constant stress, the constant emotional stress does inhibit the ability to make wise decisions. So it's a matter of staying stuck. And another is it's not bad all the time. There are some good times that are kind of scattered throughout the abusive episodes. So you go, well, it's not bad all the time.
Right.
So those are some of the bigger reasons why victims stay. And it's very, very real to the victim, but not often seen by someone on the outside. It may seem irrational, in
Mhm.
fact, to someone on the outside. So, what can we do to help? Train, train, train.
Yes.
And that means health professionals, doctors and nurses in hospitals and doctors' offices to train to identify somebody that might be a potential victim and to give them resources and support and non judgmental comments to help them, to train law enforcement.
Mhm.
And with that, my current husband also has done training on domestic violence and
Yeah.
had done so when we got together, which was wonderful because we were on the same page.
Right.
And so training is important. The first time I called 911, there were many, but the first time the law enforcement believed Bob when we talked about what was happening. Well, your wife told us here that you just beat her up. Without separating us, they had Bob and I standing next to each other, or Bob made sure he did. He put his arm around me, he kissed me, he said, "Officers, she's the mother of my children. I
Oh,
love her more than anything.
yes,
Why
that
would
sounds
I
familiar.
hurt her?"
Mhm.
She really has had issues lately. She's under so much stress. And you can see what's happened. She's accusing me of beating her.
Mhm.
And he said another thing. He said, "You know how it is, guys. I mean, you get rambunctious, you have a little bit to drink, and, you know, you may
Uh,
get a little heavy handed, but it's nothing like abuse." And the cops were nodding.
yeah, I know.
And I thought, oh my Lord, they
Mhm.
need to understand the victims.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So,
experience very similar things, and I got told, "Well, we recommend you two just separate, and he go take a walk. Everything will be fine later." I was like, "Oh, okay."
yeah. You
Okay.
know, the problem, and I was asked if I wanted to press charges.
Mhm.
Now, thank goodness, the state presses charges as
Yes,
opposed to the victim. But at
yes.
that time, it was the victim. Now, think about it. He just beat me. I had broken ribs. I had dislocated fingers and thumbs. He blew out one eardrum entirely where I couldn't hear. So I had injuries that I didn't know were injuries at the time because I was so numb and in shock.
Right.
And so it was a matter of them believing him and not understanding that I wasn't really hysterical. I was pretty darn calm when this was going on. So they didn't believe me. And so this is the reason why I have continued to do training for law enforcement to
Yes.
help them understand better the mindset of the victim.
Yes, absolutely. That is so needed. Well, we're going to take our mid roll break. We're a little late doing it, but we're having such a great conversation here with June. We're going to talk to you real quick about our store and how you can help support Break the Silence through purchases on the store. We'll be right back in just one moment. We hope you're enjoying this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. We wanted to pause for a moment and let you know that Through the Eyes of Survivors has a shop now open. And this is a great way for you to not only help survivors of domestic violence, but also let everyone know that you will not be silent about this important cause. From t-shirts to bags to coffee mugs, we have so much to choose from. To grab your swag, head to our store at breakthesilencedv.org. That's store.breakthesilencedv.org. We can't say enough about how much we appreciate all that the community does to help support us and this organization. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode and continue to subscribe to future episodes. Thank you. Back, aren't we? Uh-oh. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. Amanda will fix it here in a second. Um, We're back with June. So June, as soon as Amanda gets us kind of squared away back here, I don't know what happened.
Well,
This
you
is
know,
one of those
that's
technical difficulties that
there we go.
that happens sometimes. So forgive us, everyone. I would love to touch just a little bit on some of your background a little bit for our listeners because you had such a nice bio, like you know, so like that first step state victim handbook, that resource that you provided for many years. How did that come about?
Everything came about quite organically, actually. So before I left Bob, but in the process, like I said, I learned as much as I could about domestic violence.
Mhm.
And I started researching, and I was fortunate to be in the Florida State Capitol. So, because of that, I attended hearings at the Capitol, and I worked with our local domestic violence center. And what I learned is that there was a lot more training and help needed. So, for training for doctors and nurses, I joined forces with our center so that I would be a nurse that many of them knew that would share the topic and talk to them about it with a trained advocate. So, that was one of the ways of doing it. And eventually, with the training, I was known to the governor and his committee on domestic violence and asked to join his task force on domestic and sexual violence. In that capacity, I had the opportunity to interview women in prison
Mhm.
who were there because they killed or nearly killed their partner, abusive partner.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to go to hospitals, to different shelters around the state, and it was a huge learning opportunity for me.
Mhm.
So, in that capacity, I also testified at hearings on domestic violence so that we could get some rules in place and laws in place to support victims and make life hopefully a little bit safer for them. And
Yeah.
one of those I'm very proud of, was to pass legislation that required all health and mental health professionals to have 2 hours of continuing education every 2 years to maintain their licensure. So that was a biggie.
Oh, yes.
They didn't all like it, but I was thrilled with that. But
Yeah.
then that booklet happened when I worked for the state of Florida Department of Health for a year.
Mhm.
I saw the need in the county health departments for domestic violence intervention. It was first asking a question, a generalized question, during the assessment of all patients on admission, but also being able to provide them with something.
Mhm.
So I took the opportunity to utilize resources, combine them, and develop that resource. So it is a booklet that is available on my website. Now, a lot of the content is the same today. The resources and some of the detailed information in the back may be dated, but it is a good booklet to provide basic, overall, generalized information.
Yes. Wonderful. And, so I'd love to know, like, from your perspective as a nurse, what do you think the medical field still gets wrong sometimes in identifying and reporting survivors of emotional or psychological abuse?
One of the biggest roadblocks I've run into or obstacles is they may get the training and the
Mhm.
basic knowledge, but when coming face to face contact with a victim or potential victim,
Mhm.
they get scared. It's like, I don't know what to do, you know? And so sometimes they do nothing instead of intervening.
Right.
And the important thing is that if they suspect domestic violence, they can treat the patient the same way as if not by simply saying abuse has become so common that we are now asking all of our patients if they feel unsafe at home. or
Mhm.
a question like that. And even if the patient says no, but the health provider is thinking they're just scared, but they still think they're a victim, they'll
Mhm.
say, but for victims that we run into, there are resources available. It's really important to know there's advocates and help at your domestic violence center and to utilize those resources as well as online. So resources are available. And everyone who's a victim is courageous and strong. They've
Yeah.
learned how to survive up till now. They're not weak. Victims of domestic violence are strong women or strong people. And
Mhm.
so building up their self esteem, giving them resources, but recognizing that chances are they cannot walk out of there with the resource in hand because the abuser is likely to find it and they can't be caught with anything.
Right, exactly. One of the most beautiful things I thought I'd ever seen was with my OBGYN. In the women's bathrooms, they had signs where you could either pull off or take a picture or something like
Yep,
along those lines so that the women could get that resource without the man being right there standing over her.
absolutely. We
And
put those up in every bathroom in the hospital.
yes, yes.
Mhm,
I always thought that was such a great program. Whoever initiated that
mhm.
was a stroke of genius. It really
Yes,
was.
yes.
Um, so yeah, and let's see. There, our. I was looking through our comments here, and well, you ladies are definitely, you've been through a lot of overcomers here. I agree with you, Christy Lee, because she said we're all overcomers. So um, that's wonderful. If you guys have any other questions for June, we'd love to take those in the comments because we'll be wrapping up pretty soon. Um, but June, I know that some of your story was tied up in rediscovering faith after trauma. Can you tell us a little bit about
Did you
that?
say faith?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, huge.
Yes.
Faith is what kept me going, my faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge. Now, there were times I questioned if he knew I was still here and struggling,
Yeah.
but he did and provided me glimmer of hope here and there. So the faith was a huge way that I coped. Another was always believing that the cup was half full and not half empty. So having an attitude of survival. I was fortunate in that I had a good career. I had a successful career that brought much satisfaction. And as a result, it built my self esteem.
Yes.
So I lived this incredibly crazy life of successful professional and then a nightmare at home being abused.
Right.
But I had the balance at least to not being beaten down at work and at home. So
Mhm.
work built me up. So that was another coping mechanism that I used. Another one was compartmentalization. And that is when I was in a situation where, let's say, the morning after my worst beating, when I went to the hospital,
Mhm.
I, at one point, after doing what I needed to do to make it through the day, put myself in the position, what do I have to get done at work today? And was able to totally turn my mind to the task that I had to do as opposed to continually focusing on the abuse. So that is a strategy that worked for me. Fake it till you make it is
Yeah.
another way to say that.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to do that to get through something.
Yes.
So those were initially the survival, and I had to. I didn't feel I had a choice. So many of us, you do what you have to do. You do it for your family. You do it for your children. You do it for those you love, and so you just keep going. Yes, there's a cost to it, but you just keep going.
Yes, absolutely. And we did get a couple questions in here. So let's see. Well, we have. Kimmy says, can you speak more about financial control? Um, I now realize not normal to ask permission to have to use credit cards. Can you give more examples? Thank you.
I would love to address that.
Okay.
Now, Bob was unemployed the last 7 years of our marriage, which I've already mentioned, but he controlled the finances. He knew exactly what was in the bank account. He knew exactly what was being spent, what credit cards were being used, what the balance was, what was in the checking account. And I was not allowed to spend money,
Mm-hmm.
even though I was the sole breadwinner. It
Yes.
was being controlled very carefully. Financial abuse is very, very real. And initially in a relationship, it could be that he uses her credit card or has her pay for everything without paying her back. But it is not respecting her boundaries when it comes to finances. And she doesn't believe she has a choice,
Mm-hmm.
but has to provide him with every detail. One of the reasons it took me so long to leave Bob, which was 3 years once I made the decision, is I had to squirrel away money in
Mm-hmm.
very small amounts so he wouldn't know about it and put them in a separate bank account.
Right.
Because there's expenses, there's legal expenses. I chose to stay in the home, which means I had to change all the locks, add security measures on the windows, alarm, outside lights. So there are expenses to leaving that she needs to prepare for.
Yes, absolutely. And also, in my experience, uh, your credit. There were a lot of him taking out loans in my name that I didn't
Yes,
know was there, or credit
yes,
cards in my name that I didn't
yes,
know was there. Um,
yes,
so try to protect yourself from those things as well from happening. And then it was always when I did discover it, it was, well, we're married. That debt is mutual, and I used that for the family. And it was always put back on, now I need to help because that was done for me and my good and the children's good and the houses, the household. But that that was an erosion of my own security, my own personal boundaries, um, without me having any knowledge. And then you have to take a hold of that. So it can look like that with your credit, even like leases and
yes.
things like that. So, yes, absolutely. Jim asked another question here. It says, does the health and medical community have the ability to request a wellness check at a later date if they suspect I'm getting tongue tied, abuse?
Absolutely. Any person anywhere can. And now there's a risk with this that I think it's important for everyone to understand. If someone shows up at the house and says, I'm doing a welfare check,
Mhm.
the abuser could assume that the victim told someone about what was going on at home. And
Right.
that alone could increase her danger because she was threatened. You tell no one anything about what goes on behind closed doors.
Hmm.
So I could see that having an opposite effect. The
Hmm.
important thing when helping a domestic violence situation is to work with the victim and not the abuser.
Yes.
You work with the victim on how to maximize her safety, help her, not judge her, support her to get out and get safe and get help. But it
Yeah.
needs to be done without interfacing with the abuser because he will take it out on her before she has the opportunity to leave.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and for our listeners who still kind of in an emotionally abusive relationship, what are the first internal shifts they can start making to try to reclaim their identity?
Excellent question. You're not alone. You're stronger than you think.
Mhm.
There is help. There are safe people you can trust and go to. And that is first your domestic violence center. Family may or may not be the best people to help you.
Mhm.
They are so fearful for you and they want to protect you. And sometimes do not make decisions that are necessarily helpful, even though they're well intended. The other is to hang in there. Know that it'll take some time, but that it is possible. Know that there is hope. The earlier you're in a relationship that you realize or recognize as abusive, the easier it is to get out. So get out earlier as opposed to later.
Yes.
So I hope that's helpful.
Yes. And we have Amy asking, how do you start a safety plan?
You contact your domestic violence center.
Mhm.
Also, you can go onto my website. I have one detailed there, and it
Mhm.
is under resources. And the website is risingabovetrauma.net.
Wonderful. Definitely check that out. I'm sure the
Yes,
website's going to be in our description in the details of this
great,
podcast. Also, they've provided up here with Break the Silence. If you are able to call or text somebody, we have a support line and they can help you create a
great.
safety plan as well. And that is up there in the comments and will be in the description as well. So
I would
wonderful.
like to mention before leaving
Yes.
that I have just authored a book, which is what has initiated all of this. My
Yes.
life
And
has
I was going
totally
to ask you
changed.
to plug that. Yeah. Please.
I never expected to write a book.
Yes.
And so it started a year ago with a message that I got when I was praying one morning that I was to write a book. It
Mm-hmm.
was to help others. I had a message to share. And so that's what I've done. The book is called Rising Above the Trauma of Abuse, and it will be out by the end of the year and available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes,
So watch for that, everybody. In June, definitely share a link with us, and we'll
thank
put
you.
that out to our people when it's available. So
Thank you.
absolutely. So I have one final question for you. Um, so, what legacy do you want your work and your story to leave for the next generation of survivors?
Hope. Hope. That there is hope for everybody, no matter your circumstance, no matter how dire it seems. Never give up hope. Now, the definition of hope may change depending where you are on your life journey, but hope. Want leave to leave people with the message that there's hope for everybody
Mhm.
and there's help.
Wonderful. I love it. Well, June, thank you so much. Your courage and lifelong dedication to survivors reminds us that, abuse is definitely very real. It's insidious. It's often invisible.
Yes.
But recovery is definitely possible.
Yes.
So it's in every survivor out there who chooses to live free and be whole. So we thank you all for listening. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month for many survivors. This month isn't just about purple ribbons, it's about finding the strength to speak, to leave, to heal. And when you donate to Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, your funds help programs that meet survivors right where they are. We support our retreats, support lines, education, resources like this podcast even can turn pain into purpose. So visit our website, btsadv.org/donate. Every dollar counts during this time of year and helps keep the mission alive. Don't forget our Survivor to Survivor drops every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with real questions answered by real survivors like you. And also catch the NARC Diaries on TikTok every Wednesday and Sunday. That's at BTSADV7 on TikTok. Help us go live over there so we can reach more people and present new hope. And we are going to do a special podcast late Friday night on Halloween. I wanted to tell you about Miss Amanda, my great producer in the background. She's going to join me, and we're going to do a themed podcast for Halloween. So please join us because we are really excited about that. It will be 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. Central. We tried to make it later so that you can join after you do trick or treat with your children or whatever plans you have that evening. And the theme of it is "This is not a costume." So join us and find out what that is all about. I have to say, like I said, I'm really excited about it. And so everybody out there, thank you for listening to Through the Eyes of Survivors. Stay aware and stay compassionate, but most of all, stay empowered. And we'll see you hopefully Friday, but definitely next Wednesday. Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. My name is Tara Woodley, and I am the president of Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, an organization that gives survivors and their families, and the families that have lost loved ones to domestic violence, access to a community that understands the journey that they're facing. We hope this episode impacts you, and hopefully you want to learn more about the topic. If it is helping you in some way, let us know in the comments below. We love your feedback. Also, make sure to click the subscribe button below and the bell right next to it so that you can get notified the next time an episode premieres. We hope you will see us in the next episode, and thank you. Thank you